Hey, welcome back to Dealer Confidential, where we pull the curtain back on dealer transactions. With us today, we got a great show today, Greg. A great show. We're going to be talking about inventory, but first, there's another face on this podcast that we need to introduce, Greg.
Yeah, we got another good-looking guy on this podcast, Hal? We got three of them there.
Yes,
We're 2+1. My good buddy, I've known him for half my life, Joe Colato. He is our dealer representative and will be moving forward. Hal and I thought that it would be good to have an actual working dealer, OEM dealer with multiple franchises that could lend some current day credence to some of the things that Hal and I are talking about when we mention our buy sells and all the things that we've been doing so far on the podcast. So I want to welcome Joe. Great addition. He will be the voice of automotive OEM logic sometimes, which is good. And Hal and I will continue pontificate, right, Hal?
Yes, absolutely right. Great to have you, Joe. It really is the voice of the dealer. So important in all of these transactions, and we couldn't be happier to have you on the show. So thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
You want to get into it? Let's go. Look, there are three. Inventory is an important component of the sale. We've talked about all the different elements. You've got inventory, parts inventory, you got FFE, you got goodwill, you got real estate. We'll talk about new vehicle inventory and used vehicle inventory, but let's start with parts if we can, because that's part of the component that's a published part of the value that I'm going to be representing sellers on. And so parts is important to get the placeholder right. Okay. When I say placeholder, the parts generally get adjusted up or down as we get close to closing, and we do most likely an appraisal, but sometimes we use the dealership's internal reports. What I always like to do, Greg and Joe, is if the dealership has about a 90-day supply of parts, then it's a fairly healthy, robust parts department. There's not a lot of excess parts. But what we'll find is, and I take that value on the financial statement, and if it's a good parts performance, I normally discount it 10-15%, go 85% maybe of book value, because there's always going to be obsolescence, and most buyers, as Joe will tell you, are going to offer just the part numbers that have sold in the last 12 months, right? That's going to be the offer. So anything that's 18 months or 2 years or 5 years that's in your parts inventory, they're not going to pay for that, right? So it's really important to set the right placeholder as a value marker in the price positioning, so you don't get any surprises. And there'll be a marker, if you will, a placeholder that gets adjusted up or down when this appraisal gets done, or if the buyer and the seller agree to use an internal document, which does happen sometimes. They want to avoid the cost of the appraisal. That's how we price parts.
Yeah, no, you're on the money there. You're on the money on the presentation on that aspect. One of the things that a lot of guys miss out on is when there's a buy sell, and not all manufacturers, but a lot of them will give you a one-time return on a certain percentage of parts. And a lot of guys just don't do it, or forget about it, or don't even know about it. And this is why it's important for us to be on this podcast and bring it out to the public, because we've been in there, done that, and share the expertise amongst this panel that something like that could be, in a big parts transaction, if it's a big store. I mean, it could be $250,000 on returns on the transaction. I'm in the middle of selling a store, which that's actually happening right now, where the manufacturer is crediting me X amount of dollars for a return, which the new buyer does not have to take over. I only have to worry about the obsolescence and get rid of that. And then, like you said, 12 months, 10 months, 8 months worth of rotating parts, looking at your turn ratio, that all works well. But again, the dealer, whoever's working with them on the buy sell, should be helping them to look at that, because that's always, I find, it gets missed a lot.
Yeah.
It's,
Joe brings up a good point. We've talked about this, Greg. Before you list the business, get your parts inventory in the proper perspective, in the proper value. So you don't have to go through this with the buyer. You handle it on your own. You unfreeze the capital, because it's like frozen cash sitting on a shelf.
Yeah.
And you want to liquidate that, and you take advantage of the parts returns, as Joe just mentioned, or liquidate it in some other fashion, but get it right before you go to market. That's critical.
And you know, guys, what happens is a lot of our bigger dealers, Hal, and you've experienced this, and I have too, is a lot of bigger dealers had really good wholesale operations, and they tend to lose track of not only obsolescence, but collector type parts and stuff like that that have been ordered that are sitting in the warehouse because their wholesale business is so good that they even forget that these things are back there. And some of them don't even show up on the computer any longer. They've been, taken off. They've been vetted off. They've been written off by your accountant, whether you realize it or not. And so these not even obsolescence, these old parts are just sitting there. So eBay.com, whatever, get rid of them, whatever you can.
If you got any Pinto rear bumpers, you can, check get rid of those. All right. Call Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader is looking for the Pinto rear bumpers.
That or the Chevy Vega,
Yeah, exactly.
Or the Vega.
Okay, now that we absolutely killed our parts department,
right?
Let's get into my two favorite subjects, and that's used cars and new inventory. So let's do used car first, because I think that's the easier. And then we'll talk about new car, which could be a little complicated with all the little nuances. So let's talk about used cars first.
Yeah, mostly in my experience on used, it's at buyer's option, right? So we're not pricing the used vehicles in the published offer for the price. They're available. And what will happen is the buyer and the seller will agree on a pricing standard, whether it be the MMR or some other a blue book or whatever, or black book, I guess it is.
Yeah.
And they will meet prior to closing and go through the inventory of the used vehicles and the pricing that the dealer has in them. And the buyer will have this option of whether he wants to buy that vehicle or not. And if he doesn't, then the seller has to make a plan to liquidate that, retail it, wholesale it, buy it himself. I've had dealers buy cars for family members that they have, but he'll have some time to be able to do that. And then obviously if he sells a vehicle before the closing, then it's off the list, but the buyer has got an opportunity to buy those vehicles at their option.
Yeah. That's one of the most critical parts of the buy sell, because there's emotional thinking depending on who you're talking to and who the buyer and who the seller is. And to your point, Al, you've got to get that right up front and say, hey, are you interested in my inventory? And if you are, how are we going to handle that? Because if the person says, no, I don't like your inventory, or I don't like the cars that you have, or whatever the case may be, you have to make an exit plan. And by today's market, it's not difficult. Years ago when there was a lot of cars, it was a little bit of a problem. Right now, there's inventory is hard to come by, especially if it's decent inventory. So
that's right.
The dealer who's selling really shouldn't have a problem selling it to the current buyer, or if not, getting a second plan to move that inventory out, through different sources, wholesale, Manheim, the different auction houses, et cetera. There's many who raise their hand. In fact, I'll tell you a funny thing. I just got a call from one of my Penske associates when I was at Penske, but he's got a great store. He's doing a bang out job with used cars, and he's having a hard time finding inventory. Doesn't get enough trades because it's a Highline store.
Yep.
And he doesn't want to pay the Manheim prices, because by the time you buy a car from Manheim, you get a shift, the fees, the recon, you're over the MSRP already. And I connected him actually with some other stores that are large groups that have wholesale outfits, so they can maybe just have some discussion to help them out. So my point is that the market, just like the stock market, up and down right now, it's a healthy position for a seller to say to the guy, listen, we'll be fair. We'll come across with a favorable program for both of us, and then work through that process. But used right now is easier, perhaps, than, to Greg's point, the new.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. There's only one time I can think of, as you were talking, Joe. There's only one time that I actually priced the used vehicles in the offering, and that was when they were not floor planned. They were owned by the dealer. They were owned by the seller.
Yep.
Because if they're floor planned, there's a debt obligation on that vehicle, right? You've got it. You've got it
penciled. Changing because that interest is accumulating day by day.
Yeah, so I made a cardinal rule of saying, never say never, but it typically is at buyer's option and not price. But there was one occasion that I put it in the price, and they ended up buying all the cars because, as Joe mentioned, they needed them, right? They want that inventory because no one wants to start a new business venture with nothing in the used car lot.
Yeah,
That's a tough way to go. Yeah.
And we have about 6 minutes left. Shameless plug, Dealer Advantage, one of our sponsors.
Yeah.
It's been getting excellent response from you guys as listeners and viewers. It's dealeradvantage.com. He's got one of the best automotive dealer websites / apps in the business. Check him out, dealeradvantage.com. So enough of the shameless plug. Let's get into new cars.
Yeah.
A lot of little tiny pitfalls in this next discussion that some buying dealers do not realize that they're there.
Yeah, so 100% of the time the new vehicle is floor planned, right? So because it's a debt obligation, it's not priced and it's kind of transferred, right? So it goes from seller floor plan to buyer floor plan. If the buyer's on it, he'll probably keep, if it's especially with Ford Credit or GM or one of the major captives, it's just easier to get it moved over to that same source. And then if you want to change it 6 months or a year down the road, you do that. I'm from Ford, so there's a lot of advantages to stay with the captive because you got all kinds of buying practices and policies and incentives as well, interest rate incentives and the like. So I think the new floor plan is kind of pretty simple. It's a transfer. It's not priced in the offering, but it's sold with the offering. You can't buy it without buying the inventory. And you get the holdback and all the other stuff, Joe, underneath the line.
Yeah.
That you got to account for, right? So if the dealer's been paid the floor plan, then he owes the buying dealer that money because the inventory's got to be at competitive rates. Yeah.
One of those that the due diligence has to be very scrutinized when it comes to the new cars because you could a guy can transfer X amount of cars and realize that, he sold them 80 cars, brand new inventory, and of the 80, 15 cars were punched and were already guarded. There were 15 demos, there were loaner cars. And so that due diligence is extremely important that, that it's discussed. That it's tabulated appropriately. So, and you break it into categories. Here's fresh new cars. Here are the demos. I've got 3 demos and I got 15 loaner cars. And then you come across a price structure that's fair again, like the used cars, for those demos and for those loaner cars. I've seen a lot of deals get really achy because the due diligence wasn't done properly on the new car inventory, especially when you get into large volume stores.
Oh yeah,
which I've managed in my career. If you got a store that's got 650 cars in stock, or 500 cars, or you got a big Toyota store or a Honda store or a big Chevy store. I mean, you're going to have that kind of inventory. So you've got to be on it and be specific. That's, again, part of what the team here can provide to the public and help them out with things of that nature. Is really look at the documentation.
What I always look for, Joe, and I think you said it before, is you got potentially the manufacturer contributing for flooring interest. You got the manufacturer contributing for advertising. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that advertising dollar disappears. It goes into the dealer's ad agency. And by the way, the dealer owns the ad agency, but he lists it as a separate entity. So that money goes into that agency and the dealer takes part of that. And some of it doesn't show up at all in the invoice area of that vehicle. So now you're right. Without your due diligence, you got it. First of all, you got to understand what the manufacturer is paying. What is the manufacturer paying that dealer?
And that's what I meant by due diligence. Because not to interrupt you or cut you off, but to Hal's point too, there's a lot of incentive money on particular models.
Correct.
And they have been given. Listen, all manufacturers cut deals. Hey, Joe, take an extra 20 units, and we're going to give you, like you said, another $1,000 in marketing money for those cars. Okay, so that's $20,000 for 20 cars.
Right.
It disappeared. And now the new buyer, takes it at face value, just regular invoice, and the guy down the block that's 10 miles away is blowing them away at 1,500, 2,000 less per copy. He's like, how's this guy selling these cars?
Right. Now, the other thing,
this is where, again, the due diligence and having the right group of people to talk to that understands the market, current market, and historical as well, that can help them make sure that they don't fall into a trap like that. Because that could be a nasty trap, especially with fixed inventory.
Just my final word on that is that the invoice won't change. Right. This money is below bell. This money is sent to a dealer's account, and it's not showing up on the invoice. You're not reducing your invoice by that $1,000 because you bought 20 extra cars, or you're not getting that $500 reduction or the incentive to floor plan. So all of that is not reflected on the invoice. And the reason it's not is because dealers transfer cars. Dealers sell cars to other dealers, and they go by invoice. That invoice does not reflect all the stuff we're just talking about today.
Yeah.
So please do yourself a favor. As Joe just said, due diligence. We are finished for today. Oh my God. Did we cover everything out?
Yeah. I just want to reemphasize Joe's point. Have the right team. You don't do this alone. On that example, 650 cars, you got to go VIN by VIN.
Yeah.
You got to go VIN by VIN 2 or 3, 4 days before closing and get it right. Or you'll leave 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand on the table.
Yeah, show me the RDR.
Yeah, and to Greg's point, it's doing the physical count and then having the precise analysis of the financial statement to, go back the full year and say, let's look at this, let's look at below the line money, where did that come from, where's this being spent to? Because then that opens up a can of worms, a proper can of worms, to be able to have a right conversation to make sure you're not overpaying for things that you shouldn't be overpaying for.
Yep. Well, shameless plug, everybody. You want Hal's white paper? We had a guy call us the other day. I've been talking to Hal about it. He is just enthralled with this podcast. He's like, you guys are great. I'm going to talk to everybody about it. So long story short, how did he get to us? DealerConfidentialPodcast.com. So www.dealerconfidentialpodcast.com is our dedicated website for you to go in there, see our past podcast, register to get Hal's paper, become part of our family. You'll be able to email us. You'll be able to call us. And more importantly, we want to help you buy or sell your dealership, no matter what. If you need an evaluation, if you need property evaluated, if you need inventory evaluated, you call Joe. Joe will handle the inventories for you. So we're ready to go. The other thing is www.dealerconfidential.com is our official website. You'll be able to get to that website from dealerconfidentialpodcast.com. So we've got a lot of .coms here. And don't forget Dealer Advantage. They could be a world of good for you. Hey, Joe, great having you.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for having me, and look forward to the next one, and hope that we continue to help people out there.
Wait a minute. He just said the magic word.
All right, we're going to renew his contract. Yeah, we're going to renew his contract.
Next one. What? Okay, I know what we're probably going to be talking with our next podcast, which will be soon. Fixed ops. We've discussed fixed ops in the past. We now have a couple of guests lined up, and Joe will help obviously as well with his fixed ops experience. But we felt, and as you know from my past podcast, I think fixed ops, I think the back end of the business is the business. It's 106% of everything you should be doing in that store should generate from those doors that raise and lower and the cars in and out every day. Next week, it's going to be a great show. We look forward to having it with you guys. Okay, that's it. We're finished.
Good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
enjoyed it.
Great show.
Thank you. Take care.
Talk soon.